The town of Willow Creek had a way of deciding who you were long before you ever had the chance to prove otherwise. It wasn't written anywhere, wasn't spoken out loud, but everyone knew it. The men who mattered were known. The ones who didn't, well, they became part of the background. Samuel Reed had been part of that background for as long as anyone could remember. He wasn't a bad man. That was the strange part. He worked harder than most, owned a modest piece of land just outside town, and kept to himself in a way that made people comfortable ignoring him. He didn't drink much, didn't gamble, didn't cause trouble, and somehow that made him invisible. So when he stepped into the center of the general store one afternoon and said, "I'm looking for a wife," it didn't take more than a second for the room to erupt. Laughter came first, loud, careless, sharp enough to cut through the air like a blade. "You?" someone called out. "Samuel Reed wants a wife?" Another voice joined in. "What you gonna offer her, Sam? Silence and hard work?" More laughter followed, the kind that fed on itself. Samuel didn't flinch. He stood there, hands at his sides, his posture steady, even as the weight of their reaction pressed down on him. He had expected it. Maybe not all of it, but enough. "I'm serious," he said, his voice calm, cutting just enough through the noise to make a few people pause. That only made it worse. "He's serious," a man near the counter laughed, slapping his knee. "This just keeps getting better." "You think a woman's just waiting for you to ask?" another added. "Boy, you've barely spoken 10 words in your life." Samuel let them talk. He didn't rush to defend himself, didn't raise his voice. He waited, because he knew something they didn't. Eventually, laughter burns itself out. It always does. And when it did, when the noise dipped just enough, he spoke again. "I have land," he said. "It's not much, but it's mine. I have a house. It needs work, but it's solid. And I can offer a life that's honest." A few people exchanged glances, the laughter quieter now, less certain, but not gone. "Honest don't mean much if it's empty," someone muttered. Samuel's eyes moved across the room, steady, unbothered. "It won't be empty," he replied, "not if it's shared." That slowed things down, just a little, but not enough. "You think a woman's gonna choose that?" another man scoffed. "Out of all the men in this town?" Samuel didn't answer right away, because the truth was he didn't know. But he wasn't there for certainty. He was there because he had decided to stop letting silence define his life. "I think," he said finally, "that there might be someone who wants something real instead of something loud." The words settled differently this time. Not louder, not stronger, just clearer. And then, from the back of the store, a voice cut through what little noise remained. "And what exactly do you think real means?" The room shifted. Heads turned. The laughter stopped, not completely, but enough to matter. She stepped forward slowly, her presence quiet but undeniable. Clara Hayes wasn't the kind of woman people ignored. Not because she demanded attention, but because she didn't need to. She carried herself with a calm that made people listen, even when they didn't want to. Her past was a subject of whispers. Not loud ones, not open ones, just enough to remind everyone that she didn't quite fit the mold the town preferred. She stopped a few steps away from Samuel, her eyes fixed on him. "You said you want a wife," she continued, "so I'll ask again. What does real look like to you?" The room went still, completely still. Samuel met her gaze without hesitation. "It means she's not just there to fill a space," he said. "It means she's respected, heard, treated like she matters." Clara tilted her head slightly, considering that. "And what do you expect from her?" she asked. "The same," he replied. "Honesty, respect, a choice to stay." A murmur moved through the crowd. This wasn't the kind of answer they had expected. Clara took another step closer. "And if she has a past?" she asked. "If she's not what this town would call ideal?" A few people shifted uncomfortably. They knew exactly what she was asking. Samuel didn't look away. "Then she's human," he said. And that's enough. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Clara's eyes searched his face, looking for hesitation, doubt, anything that would prove his words were just that, words. She didn't find it. So you're saying, she continued slowly, that you'd take a woman this town has already judged, already decided isn't worth much, and you'd still stand beside her? Samuel didn't hesitate. Yes. The answer landed like a weight in the room. No laughter followed. No quick remark to break the tension. Just silence. Clara held his gaze for a long moment. Then she asked the question, the one that would stay with everyone who heard it. Then why, she said, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut through everything. Are you asking here, in a room full of people who don't believe in that? No one moved. No one spoke. The entire town, at least the part of it that mattered in that moment, had nothing to say. Samuel exhaled slowly, the weight of her question settling into him. He could have deflected, could have given an easy answer, but he didn't. Because I thought, he said, there might be one person here who's tired of being seen the way they are. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They sank. Deep. Clara's expression didn't change right away, but something in her eyes did, something quiet, something that hadn't been there before. She looked around the room then, at the faces that had laughed, that had whispered, that had decided long ago what she was worth. Then she looked back at him. And if there is, she asked. Samuel's voice stayed steady. Then I'd ask her to walk out of here with me, he said, and not look back. The tension tightened, every person in that room waiting, watching, holding their breath without realizing it. Clara didn't speak immediately. She just stood there, her gaze locked with his, her thoughts unreadable. The silence stretched longer this time, longer than anyone was comfortable with. And for a long moment, she said nothing at all. The silence stretched so far it began to feel like something alive, pressing in from all sides, waiting to see who would break first. No one in the room dared to speak. The same people who had laughed just moments ago now stood still, watching Clara like the answer to a question they didn't even realize they had asked. Samuel didn't move. He didn't rush her, didn't look away, didn't try to fill the space with more words. He had said what he came to say. Now it was her choice. Clara's eyes stayed on him, searching, not just for truth, but for something deeper, consistency maybe, or proof that what he had said wasn't just courage borrowed from a moment. She had seen men speak boldly before. She had seen them sound certain, sound different, until the world pushed back. Then they folded, just like the rest. But he hadn't looked away, not when they laughed, not when she questioned him, not even now when the entire town was watching. That mattered more than anything he could have said. Slowly, Clara drew in a breath. It wasn't loud, but in that silence, it might as well have been thunder. Her gaze shifted briefly, not to him, but to the people around them. The same faces, the same judgment, the same quiet assumptions that had followed her for years. Then she looked back at Samuel. You don't know what you're asking, she said, her voice calm, but carrying something heavier beneath it. Samuel didn't hesitate. I know enough, he replied. A faint crease formed between her brows. No, she said softly, you think you do, but you don't know what it means to stand next to someone this town has already decided doesn't belong. A few people shifted uncomfortably. The truth had a way of doing that. Samuel took a small step forward, not enough to close the distance completely, but enough to show he wasn't backing away. Then tell me, he said. Clara studied him again, longer this time. Then she shook her head slightly. It's not something you explain, she said. It's something you live with. Then I'll live with it, he answered. The simplicity of it hit harder than any long speech could have. Clara's eyes flickered, just for a second, like something inside her had been caught off guard. And when it gets harder, she pressed, when people talk, when they look at you different, when it costs you more than you expected? Samuel's voice didn't change. "Then it cost me," he said. "Not you." That shifted something. Not in the room, but in her. She looked at him, really looked at him now, as if weighing every word he had spoken against every moment he had stood still when others would have stepped back. The silence returned, but it wasn't the same as before. It wasn't empty. It was full of something building. Finally, Clara let out a quiet breath and took a step forward. The movement alone was enough to make the room tighten again. "You said you'd ask her to walk out with you," she said. Samuel nodded once. "I did." Another step closer. "And not look back." "That's right." She stopped just a few feet away now, close enough that there was no space left for misunderstanding. "Then ask me," she said. The words landed softly, but they carried more weight than anything else that had been said that day. A ripple moved through the crowd, quiet but undeniable. Samuel didn't waste the moment. He didn't look around, didn't second guess. He met her gaze and spoke. "Walk out of here with me," he said, "and don't look back." Clara held his eyes for a heartbeat longer, then another, and then she nodded. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it was final. The room seemed to exhale all at once, as if no one had realized they had been holding their breath. A few whispers started up again, softer now, uncertain, but neither of them paid attention. Samuel turned toward the door, not waiting to see if she would follow, because that wasn't the kind of choice he was offering, and behind him, she stepped forward. One step, then another, not rushed, not hesitant, just certain. The wooden floor creaked beneath their boots as they crossed the room, the same room that had laughed, that had judged, that had already decided what both of them were worth. No one stopped them. No one spoke. And when they reached the door, Samuel pushed it open, sunlight spilling in across the threshold. He stepped outside first. Clara followed. And for a brief moment she paused, not because she was unsure, but because she felt it, the weight of everything she was leaving behind. Then she stepped forward fully, into the light, into the open air, and she didn't look back. The door closed behind them with a soft, final sound. Outside, the town looked the same dusty road, the same buildings, the same quiet hum of life continuing as if nothing had changed. But something had. Clara stood there for a moment, her gaze moving across the street, then settling somewhere beyond it. Samuel didn't speak right away. He gave her the space to take it in. After a few seconds, she let out a slow breath. "That was easier than I thought," she said quietly. Samuel glanced at her. "Walking out usually is," he replied. "It's everything after that people struggle with." A faint hint of a smile touched her lips. "Good," she said. "I've never been afraid of what comes after." He nodded once. "Then we'll be fine." She looked at him, a question still lingering in her expression. "You really believe that?" she asked. Samuel met her gaze, steady as ever. "I believe in choices," he said, "and you just made one." She considered that, then nodded slightly. "So did you." They stood there for a moment longer, two people who had just stepped out of everything they knew and into something uncertain, but chosen. Then Samuel gestured down the road. "My place is a few miles out," he said. Clara adjusted her shawl slightly, her posture straightening with quiet resolve. "Then we should start walking," she replied. He raised an eyebrow faintly. "You don't waste time." "Neither do you," she said. That earned the smallest hint of a smile from him. And with that, they started forward, side by side, leaving the town behind them, not as people who had been pushed out, but as people who had chosen to leave. The road stretched ahead, long and open, uncertain in all the ways that mattered. But this time, it didn't feel like something to fear, because neither of them was walking it alone. Days turned into weeks as Clara settled into the rhythm of Samuel's land. It wasn't easy. It wasn't meant to be. The work was hard, the days long, the silence sometimes heavy, but it was honest. And that made all the difference. Samuel never treated her like she owed him anything. No expectations, no pressure, just space to be exactly who she was, without the weight of judgment pressing in from every direction. And slowly something changed. The distance she had learned to keep from everyone began to fade, not all at once, but enough. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the fields, painting everything in gold, Clara stood beside him near the fence line. They had spent the day working without much conversation, but the silence between them had shifted again. Easier now, more understood. "You know," she said quietly, "they're still talking." Samuel didn't look surprised. "They always will." She glanced at him. "Does it bother you?" He shook his head. "No." "Why not?" she asked. "Because they're not the ones living my life," he said. Clara studied him for a moment, then looked back out at the land. "You're different," she said. "No," he replied. "I just decided to stop letting other people decide things for me." That answer stayed with her. A long pause followed, filled with nothing but the sound of wind moving through the fields. Then Clara spoke again. "You asked for a wife," she said. Samuel glanced at her. "I did." She nodded slightly. "And you got one?" There was a quiet challenge in the question, not harsh, just real. Samuel didn't rush his answer. "That depends," he said. "On what?" she asked. He met her gaze. "On whether you chose that, or just the road out of town." The honesty of it caught her off guard, but it didn't push her away. If anything, it did the opposite. Clara took a slow breath, her eyes steady on his. "I didn't walk out with you because I needed saving," she said. "I walked out because I was done staying somewhere that never saw me." Samuel nodded once. "I know." A small silence. Then she stepped a little closer, her voice quieter now but certain. "And I'm still here," she said. He held her gaze. "Yeah. That means something," she added. "It does." Another pause. Then without hesitation she said, "Then yes." Samuel frowned slightly. "Yes?" A faint smile touched her lips, subtle but real. "Yes," she repeated. "You have a wife." The words didn't echo, they didn't need to, because everything that mattered was already understood. Samuel's expression softened, just enough to show what he usually kept hidden. Not surprise, not disbelief, just something steady, something real. He nodded once. "All right," he said, and that was it. No grand moment, no need for one, because what they had built wasn't loud. It wasn't fragile. It was chosen, and that made it strong. As the sun slipped below the horizon, leaving behind a quiet, steady glow, they stood there together, not defined by what the town had said about them, but by what they had chosen for themselves. And that was more than enough.